All right, lots of lectures down. There are today, plus 4 more, 5 lectures to go. This is good stuff. So what are we going to do for the rest of the course? We're going to finish up with price discrimination today. Last week I was a little bit shaky towards the end of the class, so I'll try and clarify up any confusion about that. And then we're going to do one of my other favorite models in all of economics, which always comes at the very end of textbooks, but I love it so much I'm going to teach it to you, called adverse selection, asymmetric information type problems. It's also the model that a guy named George Akerlof got the Nobel Prize for, so he's one of the many Berkeley Nobel laureates. So I think you should know it. You can't graduate from Berkeley, come out of an econ class, and not know what the lemons problem is about. Besides, lemons are so exciting. Then we're going to do, I haven't really fully decided what I'm going to do with the rest of my time. I definitely want to do externalities and public goods. Those are really important. And then I have room for maybe one more. So the choices are we could do a tiny little bit of game theory, which is always fun, prisoner's dilemmas and stuff like that, strategic behavior. We could do choice under uncertainty, which does involve math, which is not a favorite. What else do we have? I think those are the 2 ones that we could be doing that would be kind of nice. So think about it a little bit. Game theory versus choice under uncertainty. Send me emails because I know the response rates are low. If you do send an email, the impact of your vote will be very high because I'll get a total of 4 emails. So if you have preferences, voice them now. It used to be that we could cover all of this, but then the provost decided that 14 weeks is better than 15 weeks. So I was robbed of 2 lectures, which I still don't like. I shouldn't say that too loud. We have a new provost. It's not that guy's fault. All right. IS 106, where are we? We are like cruising towards really huge depths of economic understanding. We've started polishing off market failures left to right. We started with monopolies. Monopolies, of course, are these firms that face the entire market demand curve, can set price and quantity. We showed that a monopolist causes deadweight loss in a market because he or she produces less than the socially optimal quantity and charges a higher price. We also showed that taxing a monopolist makes this problem even worse. We political economists understand that subsidizing a monopolist is just politically not feasible at all. So that was interesting. So we talked a little bit about a specific type of monopoly, which was this natural monopoly, which is essentially a firm that has, or a market that's characterized by diminishing average costs of production everywhere. So one really big firm can produce output much more cheaply than 2 firms half that size. If in that market that firm acts as a monopolist, we saw that they produce very little and charge a really high price and are profitable usually. But since we also noticed that these are utilities that bring sewage out into the ocean, which is of course a problem we will then talk about when we talk about externalities. But the notion here is these are usually firms whose services are highly desirable. So if we want everybody to have it and we have these firms charge the socially efficient price, that price is going to be below the average cost of production because for firms with increasing returns to scale, marginal cost is below average cost. So those firms in the long run would go out of business. So we left off with the notion that we regulate these firms, we allow them a reasonable nominal rate of return, and we essentially regulate them to 0 profits, where they produce a little bit less than the socially efficient amount, charge a little bit of a higher price, but get to earn 0 profits. I broke a promise. I said I would give you a well-drawn picture and put it on BSpace. I haven't done that yet. So this afternoon I've got my work cut out for me. I still owe you that picture. I owe you the upload of grades for midterm 2. I owe you, I think, probably a quiz upload somewhere. So BSpace is in dire straits. I need to take care of that BSpace thing. I just hate BSpace, so every time I log on, I get angry. But we have a new platform which I don't understand at all. So BSpace is... Let's not get into that. Let's talk about economics. Then we talk about regulation of monopolies. We have antitrust laws that, of course, try and interfere with firms' abilities to act as monopolists, which is an interesting part. And then I told you should read the book called The Informant over summer. It's a good book. Then we talk about monopolistic competition, which is essentially a monopoly over a good with close substitute. So firms differentiate their product. Your toothpaste is different than mine, even though it's the same product, really. So these are firms that can differentiate their product, so they act as a monopolist for that product, but they're close substitutes for that product. So in the first couple of rounds or time periods where you can differentiate your product, you usually earn rents, in some cases really significant rents. By rents, I mean sort of profits above zero economic profits. But as time goes on and other firms differentiate products and steal market share away from you, you end up having 0 profits in the long run. At that point, of course, the incentives for other firms to enter that market with similar products go away. So this is, in theory, a sustainable equilibrium. The problem with monopolistic competition is that these welfare losses, the deadweight loss here is persistent. Even if the firm makes 0 profits, there is a deadweight loss there. So this is not efficient. Then we moved on to price discrimination. And this is what we're going to start talking about today. Start today with some more, and then we're going to move on to asymmetric information here. But we've talked about firms that price discriminate. They charge different prices to either different sets of consumers or for different quantities of consumption or in different markets. So what we're going to see is firms that are able to charge different consumers different prices based on observable characteristics, or that are going to be able to charge a different price for a CD in the US than they do in Europe, or that provide quantity discounts. This buy one, get one 50% off, you see that everywhere, right? So you see, wow, good deal. I see, you evil price discriminating firm. That's what I see when I see those things, and then I buy 2 pairs of pants. If you're 6'5", buying pants is really not easy, by the way. All right. So we talk about 3 types of price discrimination, and this is where we ended last time. Perfect or first-degree price discrimination is one where a firm manages, and by the way, I made the slides on time, and then I just forgot to pull the trigger and post it on BSpace. They're on BSpace now, but I posted them like 5 minutes ago. So those of you who have iPads, you can download them and look at them. I apologize for that. If you're logging on at midnight and the slides aren't there, send me an angry email. I won't hold it against you. In fact, I'll say thank you and give you $1 next time. Do you know how much consumer surplus you've caused by making sure slides are up on time? So please yell at me. I'm used to it. Not by you guys. Now you're wondering who's yelling at Max. About everybody else, except for at home. We're good. So perfect price discrimination, first-degree price discrimination. You can charge each consumer their reservation price, right? So you are able to charge each consumer their maximum willingness to pay for that additional good. This is really, really hard to do. But it's, we're getting to settings where this is almost doable. So you sell each unit to that consumer for the most that the customer is willing to pay. And what we'll see out of that model is kind of a cool thing where we're going to get to the efficient outcome, but consumers get 0 consumer surplus. And I'll show that to you graphically. Quantity discrimination means if you buy the first shirt, you pay $100, the second one is 50% off. The deal here is if a single firm charges a single price, right, or a single high price, you sell, that monopolist sells that good to the people who are willing to sell the high price, but fails to sell more goods to people who have a lower reservation price. So by being able to charge a high price first and then a lower price for higher quantities, you're capturing that part of the market that wasn't buying anything before because it had a lower willingness to pay for that that good. So you're increasing sales at a lower price by doing that. And if that $50 shirt costs you $35 to produce, you're making a nice amount of profit with that. All right? Then we have multi-market price discrimination, where you can, in different markets, charge different prices. Again, you need to be a firm that can set different prices in different markets, which movie theaters can to a certain degree. But for example, multimedia companies are very, very careful about that. So I spent a sabbatical in Germany. The amount of money you pay for music in Germany is very different to the amount of money you pay in the US. The amount of money you pay for Apple computers in Germany, very different to the amount of money you pay for the identical Apple computer here. The number is the same, but there's this little issue that $1 and €1 are not worth the same amount, right? So something that costs $999 here costs 999 euros in Germany. I know. It may not be the case anymore today, but it certainly was last year. So that's a 30% difference. So what we'll see is these firms that can charge different prices in different markets, they'll just act like monopolists in each market. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means for welfare. All right, let's hit it. Here we go. So let's think of a monopolist, right? A monopolist that has market power, meaning that monopolist can actually set price where he or she wants to. So it's an unregulated monopoly. And that monopolist can prevent resales, okay? So that monopolist can somehow prevent people who are getting a lower price or buying goods for a lower price from reselling them to others. In services, this is pretty easy, right? So if you got a better deal at replacing the sewage pipe in your yard than that to your neighbor, you can't resell what you paid for the replacement of your sewage pipe to your neighbor at a profit. So services, you can't really resell. And many things you can't resell, but in some cases you can, and that makes price discrimination hard. The other thing we need to know is that that monopolist has to know how much each customer is willing to pay for each unit. Purchase. Good English, Max. There's a D missing here. Each unit purchased. So this is the all-knowing monopolist, right? This is a happy firm. I can prevent resales, I can charge whatever I want, and I know how much each customer is willing to pay for each additional unit. So what does that firm do? What that firm does, the all-knowing monopoly, sounds scary, it sells each individual unit at each individual's reservation price, okay? So if I asked, I don't want to pick on people, but if I asked you today, how much would you be willing to pay to get a copy of the final early? $100, really, only? Do you know what the net present value of an A in this class is? No, I'm joking. $100 is a fair price. Actually, that's way more than I expected. But the point here is, if you answer truthfully, how much am I going to charge you for the final if I were a corrupt faculty member, which I'm not? $100, right? Do I have any incentive to sell it to you for any less? So if I asked the person sitting behind you who's a Cowboys fan, we're not going to hold that against you. That's all right. I don't understand football. I only understand soccer. But if I asked you how much you'd be willing to pay for a copy of the final early, what would your answer be?
I'd pay a lot. I'd pay the reading expense.
Okay, excellent. So let's say $400. I'm making up that number, right? Would I still charge you $100 if I were that monopolist? I'll charge you exactly $400. So we could keep on going, right? I could just walk through the class, and if I assume that you're not lying, right, or I have my ESPN going, I could actually figure out what each. Yeah, that's funny. I thought so too. It's a classic joke. But the point here is, if I can actually figure out exactly what you're willing to pay for a copy of the final early, I will charge you exactly that price, right? Some of you more, some of you less. But I have to be able to trust that you truthfully report your marginal willingness to pay, which I trust you. But when it comes to final exams, I don't trust you. All right, a little bit. But I've been burned so many times. I've never sold a final, of course. I mean, that's illegal. But the point here is, I will charge you your maximum willingness to pay for that additional unit. Well, what tells me the marginal willingness to pay for an additional unit? It's the demand curve, right? The demand curve tells me the maximum willingness to pay of that, or the marginal willingness to pay of the next consumer who's wanting to buy one of those units, right? And it's downward sloping. There are some customers who are willing to pay a lot versus others that are going to pay less, and that's why we have this nice downward sloping demand curve. So when we're thinking about what perfect price discrimination looks like, it looks something like this. I feel a little bit like in Victorian England. All I need is an elbow patch. I have a standing desk. This is pretty exciting here. Q, demand curve, looks something like this. This is a monopolist, so the monopolist charges where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So let's just draw the marginal revenue curve right away. This is marginal revenue. And now marginal cost, you can draw it anywhere you like. It doesn't really matter. To make your life easy, draw it coming out of the origin. So let's do scenario one. Let's do scenario one where we have a regular monopolist that just charges the same price to every customer, right? A non-price discriminating monopolist. So it's the same monopolist, but he can't charge different prices. He has to charge the same price to everyone. So what does that monopolist do? Sets marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, figures out the quantity and price. So this is QM, and this here is PM, right? So that's the price and the quantity that the old school monopolist that we've known all along would, the quantity he or she would produce and the price he or she would charge. Now, that's not what the price discriminating monopolist is going to do, right? The price discriminating monopolist says, well, you know, this other monopolist here is a little bit of a loser, right? Why would you charge the first guy who's willing to pay $10 when here we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, $6.50, right? So why would you allow this first guy to get $3.50 in consumer surplus when I know that that first guy is willing to pay $10? So as we go down the demand curve, the first guy is willing to pay this much. The second person, that much, and so on. So this person just figures out the willingness to pay for each additional unit, which is captured by the demand curve. And that's the price that this person charges. So this is price 1, price 2, price 3, and so on until you get down here to, let's call it PL, the last unit sold. So what this means, each unit sold, right, I'm walking through here with copies of the final, and I'm selling them, and I'm going to ask you to state your willingness to pay for the final, and you'll line up by highest, $5,000, to lowest, $0, because I'm going to get an A in this class no matter what, right? The point here is, I would walk around, and I would hand you the final, and you would hand me your reservation price, or your willingness to pay for that final, and that would vary across quantity, right? So the price charged here traces out the demand curve perfectly. So what does this mean for equilibrium quantity? Well, at this point right here, the last person that's willing to pay what it actually costs me to produce that additional unit, that's going to be the last unit sold, right? Because if I sold more, if I actually went over here, if I went further down the demand curve, what's true here? Well, here, the willingness to pay of the individual is lower than what it costs me to produce that additional unit, so I'm not going to make a sale, right? If the final costs me $10 to produce and you're only willing to pay $8 for it, we're not going to reach an agreement here. So this stops at this point right here. You guys are allergic to something today. So this stops at Q star, where the maximum willingness to pay, or marginal willingness to pay, is exactly equal to the marginal cost of production. Am I going to draw a price that goes across here? There's no equilibrium price here. Everybody pays a different price, all right? Now, let's do the fun part. Max, there's nothing fun about economics to you, right? To me, there's lots of fun stuff. Consumer surplus, producer surplus, welfare. And I want to do 3 comparisons here. Whoa, Max, what do you mean 3 comparisons? Get ready. Okay? I'm going to do competition. I'm going to compare that to the single price monopoly. And I'm going to compare this to the price discriminating monopoly. Okay? So I'm going to compare this monopolist here that charges the same price to everyone and the price discriminating monopolist to our regular competitive outcome. Our regular competitive outcome, and I'm going to draw that in green because that's the happy color. Kermit. Right? This here is P star. That's perfect competition. So we're not going to do our usual 2-state comparison, but we're going to do a 3-state comparison. This is getting crazy, okay? So what's consumer and producer surplus under P star, Q star? What's producer and consumer surplus under PM, QM? And what's producer and consumer surplus under the price discriminating monopolist and Q star units being sold? So let's do some pizza slices here. This is exciting. I don't know what color I'm going to use. Let's use something new. How about blue? A, B, C, D, and E. Okay? A is this big triangle up here, B, rectangle here, C, little triangle right here, D, Texas-ish, and E, triangle. Okay? So we know for perfect competition this is easy, right? You can do this in your sleep by now. Consumer surplus is A plus B plus C. Producer surplus is D plus E. Welfare is A plus B plus C plus D plus E. That's easy. How about the monopolist? The monopolist charges PM, restricts output to QM, so consumer surplus is the difference between demand and price over the range of consumption, so it's just going to be A. Producer surplus is going to be the difference between price and marginal cost over the range of production. It's going to be B plus D. So welfare is A plus B plus D. Now I'm going to add another row down here, which I'm going to call deadweight loss, because I don't have enough room on the right-hand side. Okay, so deadweight loss under perfect competition is 0, clearly, because that's the point of comparison. But the monopoly, right, we go from having A, B, C, D, and E amount of welfare to having A, B, and D amount of welfare. So deadweight loss is C and E. Now what about the price discriminating monopolist? What happens here? And this is going to make you excited and angry at the same time. Okay, you ready for it? All right. So what's going to be producer surplus here? It's the difference between price and marginal cost over the range of production. So price, let's get fancy. I always travel with 17 pounds of adapters because you never know where you're going to go. Here we go. Yeah, you think I'm kidding. Whoa, lasers. So price charge for each additional unit here is given by the demand curve, right? This thing here. I have a green laser pointer too because I'm an environmental economist. So this is downward sloping, and the producer surplus for each unit is the distance between price and marginal cost. Price and marginal cost over the range of production. So we keep on doing this until we get here. What's producer surplus? What is it? Everything. That's right. A, B, C, D, and E. A plus B plus C plus D plus E. Consumer surplus is the distance between demand and price. 0, 0, 0, 0, want some more zeros? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, not a 0, 0, 0, Gonix, okay? So the point here is there's absolutely no consumer surplus here. 0, because you're charged your reservation price. Now, what's welfare? A plus B plus C plus D plus E. What's deadweight loss? 0. Is this efficient? As much as you don't want to say it, it's efficient. There's no deadweight loss here, right? So first order price discrimination, where firms extract every last penny of consumer surplus out of your hard-working wallets, right? It's efficient. So most economists would go, happy dance, right? This is an efficient outcome. What's the issue with this, of course? The distributional impacts here are disastrous, right? The equity concerns here are significant. This is where all surplus is captured by producers and consumers get absolutely no surplus. So while first order price discrimination is efficient, right, it maximizes the size of the pie, the entire pie goes over to Mr. Burns, right? Homer gets 0 slices of the pie. So the point here is it's efficient, it's not equitable, which is why we generally